Good day, folks. It is the 10th day of August and the year is 2025. And a meeting is scheduled to be held between the US President Donald Trump and the Russian President Vladimir Putin. And it's going to be, the venue is going to be in Alaska. So on the 15th, the meeting will be held in Alaska, one of the 50 states of United States of America. The northernmost state is Alaska. And strangely, something comes to my mind. Alaska was purchased by United States of America back in 1867 for the price of $7.2 million back then in 1867. But if you wonder, before US purchased Alaska, which country was it part of? Well, it was a Russian territory. It was part of Russia, though it's separated by the sea. Interestingly, though, it's only 22 miles from the northern hemisphere between Alaska and Russia. Anyways, all that apart, we have two people. Piers Morgan is, of course, a British, is from a British background, but is quite well known. And of course, he used to be a staunch liberal, but ever since Trump came to power, everybody's making a U-turn bit by bit. They're becoming more neutral, at least, even though they are not 100% supportive. At least they are beginning to be neutral, somewhat impartial when they televise their views and news. And the next person is Jeffrey Saxs, a Columbia University professor of history. Jeffrey Saxs has he speaks his mind out and he doesn't hold back. Tries to be impartial, but I have some issues with him because once he was talking about China and he said China never invaded any country. How could a professor say something so factually incorrect? What about Tibet? Don't we all remember when Dalai Lama fled and India gave refuge and haven for him? And how come he could forget? And he's a professor of history, but world history, he should, I don't know. I mean, I'm no professor, but, I somehow gather facts. In the olden days, you go to the library and get books, but these days, at a touch of a button, Google information, even Wikipedia is a good source, although some people have different views about it. At any rate, Jeffrey Sachs, if you check Google China, it will give you a list of the times and the history, how many times China has invaded different countries in the region. Anyway, all that apart, let's listen to Jeffrey Sachs and Piers Morgan, and let's go.
Professor Saxs, great to have you back on Uncensored. I know the line isn't great
to be with you.
So let me just ask you, just straightforwardly, if Trump in a few days launches a massive tariff war against Russia, will it have more impact on the Russian economy than the sanctions strategy, which doesn't appear to have worked?
I don't think so. I think that Trump's threats are basically unenforceable. Russia is exporting its energy to Asian countries, especially to China and India. Both have made clear that they will continue to import Russian oil. The U.S. already has demonstrated it does not have clout vis-a-vis China in a trade war. I don't think Trump's threats, therefore, really amount to an end of this war. The problem is that what the Western countries are demanding is not a peace agreement. They're demanding a ceasefire. They're not ready to talk about actually the underlying causes of the conflict. And that's very frustrating because the war could end in a day. It could end in a week if there was more honesty on both sides about what should be done.
I mean, Trump clearly feels disillusioned with Putin because he feels that the tenure of their conversations they've been having bears no relation to what Putin then does. In other words, he says all the right things in the phone calls, but then immediately launches the biggest ever bombardment of Kyiv, for example, after the last call. So Trump now feels he can't trust Putin. But from what you're saying, is that because if you're Putin, you're thinking, well, why do I need to do anything here when it's obvious to Russians that the problem here is the problem they've articulated, the encroachment of NATO onto their border, they have to protect themselves, and so on, the arguments that you've put forward before, and that Putin therefore feels there's not much that America can do about this, short of actually engaging in direct military action, which they're probably betting will never happen.
Yeah, Piers, you're exactly right. But a strange thing happened in the initial discussions when Trump first came in and he sent Steve Witkoff to Moscow. They talked about real things. They talked about NATO enlargement. They talked about how that had to stop and so on. It looked like they were moving towards peace. Then the neocons all over the place in Europe and in the United States said, no, NATO can't be on the table. You can't talk about these real things. And the discussion from Trump and the Western leaders in general just shifted towards ceasefire and unconditional ceasefire. We're not going to talk about anything other than ceasefire. And Putin said, I don't get it. Well, he didn't, I'm putting words in his mouth or paraphrasing. He said, but we were talking about ending the conflict. Now you're talking about a ceasefire. And the Russians have said repeatedly every day, we want to get to the root causes of this. This is not just a delay for another attack by the West. We know how many people hate us. This is clear. They hate us in Britain. They hate us in France. They hate us in the US. We want to get to the root causes. We don't want just a pause.